I don't
This
have
could
one.
be interesting, this could
Yeah.
make for a very interesting beginning to the interview. People are like, he has no idea the interview has started.
Oh.
Oh, and no pressure, but this is probably my first proper interview in almost 2 years.
Voice acting, ADR, Foley, all those things help make this story we all love so much come to life. Now, as I'm talking right now, the audio you're hearing is actually from a microphone I'm recording in my office right now. So what I'm saying is not actually what's coming through the video, but what they have to do is go into post later on and do things, be able to put sound effects in. Without it, we just kind of seem crazy. This is how we make, honestly, the best part of the show. The monsters come to life. All right, so that wasn't great. I know I'm not a professional at ADR, of course, and a lot of the people who come on the show who are Power Rangers or play Power Rangers, they are not experts either. But when you get away from the people who are on screen all the time and you get into the monsters, you need professionals. People who can knock this stuff out quickly and effectively. And if there's one person that everybody in the Power Ranger fandom should know, it's Campbell Cooley. I was looking up the years that he has been on Power Rangers and the years that other people have been on Power Rangers. And as far as actors go, the only person who really comes even close is Paul Schreier, who played Bull. Some people don't know that he actually did a couple Monsters of the Day in seasons after he was gone. And then, of course, he came back for a couple cameos here and there, and then came back for Samurai, and also did Hyperforce, which was considered canon by Saban at the time. But even Paul comes a few years short when it comes to Mr. Cooley. He is such an insanely nice guy. I highly recommend, if you're going to be at Ranger Stop or you're going to be at any convention with him, you should definitely go talk to Campbell, because he is so caring to the fandom. You definitely will have a great time talking to him. He can hold his own. Honestly, just a dream come true to have Campbell be on my YouTube channel. But enough of my yakking, let's jump in. You need to learn a little bit about Mr. Cooley. I should first start out by saying that I feel absolutely horrible. I always want to make sure it's as convenient for you as possible. And me looking up what time zones were in New Zealand and what time it was compared to what my time zone was, and then to find out that you're not in New Zealand right now. I'm talking to you at 2 a.m. and I feel horrible because I was trying to do the right thing by...
I didn't think anything about it. Look, hey, if I was really tired or inconvenienced, I could have said, look, I need to get off. But I didn't. So, you have nothing.
No, you're very, very nice. Appreciate it. I just feel
Whatever.
You're a very humble guy because you don't think of yourself as a huge part of Power Rangers. As far as people who have been around the franchise, you've been around it for
Almost 20. I started 2005.
And it doesn't have to be specifically Power Rangers. Probably the job you're the most proud of as far as being an on-screen actor.
That's really hard to answer, because people automatically would think it's like, oh, it's the things where he's had more screen time, or maybe it's like a bigger production. I was pretty proud of an episode I did on Spartacus for all its gruesomeness. The thing that I generally gravitate towards are like the smaller kind of roles that never really get seen. Like, I did a lot of short films, maybe a short-lived TV series in New Zealand, and where maybe I had like a walk-on part or something.
Yeah.
And it's usually those kind of smaller parts that I really get a kick out of. One director in New Zealand that I worked with a lot, I did so much for him, and his work was magnificent. It always looked amazing. But he never gave me any direction, and that just drives me crazy. It's just like, as actors, we want that security, we want that direction, we want somebody to say, hey, you're doing a good job, or whatever. And he would never give me any feedback. And one day I said to him, Peter, if I have any issue with you as a director, it's that you never give me any direction. And his response was, I don't give you direction because I know you're going to give me exactly what I want. It was actually one of this guy's productions that I was in. It was a very small, short-lived one-season TV series called The Wired Chronicles. I don't even think you can find it on
really?
the internet thing. And all I played was a hologram. And it was so that these people were like trapped in a video game, and they had to get at a certain level or something. And so I was kind of like this woodland character or something.
Greetings, stranger, and welcome to the Forbidden Forest. Lovely it was once, and safe, but now steeped in evil and danger.
We're looking for...
Will you, brave traveler, take on the quest to rid our forest of the evil Euromancer? Can you help to fill our kingdom once again with lightness and laughter?
I'd done my own costume, and I'd glued all this, foliage on my face and everything, and leaves, and got a huge kick out of doing that. It's usually like the smaller parts that I've done that nobody's ever going to see that I'm the proudest of. So
yeah, I've heard some actors say that when they do something really dramatic, it almost is harder on them when they get home because they've just been so drained. Do you generally like more lighthearted stuff?
I love comedy. I love doing comedy. For me, regardless of whether it's comedy or whether it's drama or whatever, usually by the end of the day, I go home and I just crash. It's just because it just takes so much out of you.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of people would say that comedy is a lot harder than drama.
It's easy to be serious. I think it's harder to be funny and actually be funny, like get a laugh every time, First season, you started off on SPD.
It just so happens I can help you.
I hear people all the time, they ask New Zealand people, were you a fan of Power Rangers? But it didn't air in New Zealand, at least towards the beginning of the franchise. But what was your first impression of Power Rangers when you first started the show?
This is where I embarrass myself. My first impression back in 94, and that was just casually, I was flipping through channels. Right. I didn't know anything about the franchise. I just knew it was this kind of like kid show. Mm-hmm. When I got the audition for SPD, and it wasn't until like much later I found out that these auditions were like really, really hard to get for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
I went in and I was like, I really need this job. And they flashed the stuff up on the screen that I had to, find the voice for. And I don't remember much about the audition. They probably just like flashed the image of Tomars reading his lines off of a page or something. And it wasn't until I got the job and I went in and I was recording him, I was watching it going like, there's something really off about this. And then what I didn't realize that they were intercutting American footage with Japanese footage.
Yeah.
Why is this feeling so different? And then you look in the background, there's like all these Japanese billboards, and like, oh, they're in Japan right now. So that was really disorienting. This was my first real professional voice job. Utterly terrified. Let's say that this iPad was like the music stand, where they would put the page on it. Yeah. There, I was so scared. I was clutching the sides of the music stand the whole session going.
Yeah. Very, very different from what you do now.
So unfair! I was just having a little summer vacation!
The director was very chill, he was very relaxed, and he kind of helped me through it. For the following season for Mystic Force, and I recorded another character, and I was still a bit nervous. By the third time I went in, I was just like, okay, let's do this.
It's gonna take more than that.
The first character you did was just kind of a monster of the week. I don't know if they have a different phrase for it.
Monster of the week. Sometimes we say monster du jour, monster of the day.
That's a lot more elegant sounding. I think most people assume that the monster of the week is sort of just a throwaway voice, like, it's one character for one episode. We don't need to focus on it. But how much time do you guys actually put into those short-lived characters versus someone like Snide or someone who's like a season-long character that you're going to work with?
It's actually a really, really good question. Probably a lot of people just assume that we'll just cast anybody off the street to just do a one-off monster. I can honestly say that a lot of time and effort goes into casting these monster du jours. My first number of years working on the show, I didn't really know how much effort went into it because I was just behind the screen. Once I started assisting and directing the voices, I saw how much effort went into it, and they really, really, it was quite meticulous, how we select people to come in, directing them with trying to give them a direction to go. A story I don't think I've ever told. One guy who came in, I think it was his first audition ever. And my guess is that the primary ADR director brought him in to audition, or maybe I brought him in, I don't remember. You could tell he really, really wanted this job, and he just pushed his voice harder than a human being should. And the voice that came out was phenomenal. That's the voice. That's the voice. That's going to get you the job. He got about 3 lines into the audition, and I stopped him and I said, Ashton, I'm going to stop you. And he looked at me kind of confused. And I said, I'm afraid if we submit this, you're going to get the job. He looked at me like, what? What do you mean? If you get this part, are you going to be able to sustain this voice for like 30, 40 cues? And he went, no, that's why I'm stopping you. Somehow we got the voice to about 50% of what he was doing, and he got a lot of effort does go into these monsters of the day, and they're not just throwaways. They're important.
So then you moved into doing some loop artist stuff, and I think a lot of people aren't really familiar what exactly loop artists do, background voices and everything like that. When did you start doing the loop artist stuff?
When I went in the second year, so that would have been about 2006, they were doing, I think, Mystic Force, and I had gone in to record a monster called Skullington. The person that was directing the loop actors was literally in a recording booth, just like right next to the room that we were in. The ADR director who was dealing with me got a call. The loop director said, we've had an actor not show up. Can you solve the problem or something? And he said, well, yeah, I've got this guy in right now. He's good. I could send him over. And she was like, fine, that's great. After I finished recording Monster du Jour for Mystic Force, I had like an hour to kill. I went and got a sandwich, came back, and I went into the looping session. And that was a whole new nerve-wracking experience. It's not just, new faces and new director and new skills and everything, but you're with your peers, and you want to you want to impress the director, but you also want to impress your peers. And so, and you're trying to figure out how this all works, and you don't want to step on anybody's toes. Somehow, I don't know, I just kind of fit right in. And the loop director basically brought me in for like every looping session until like 2018.
Oh, that's awesome. How much effort is really put into that, the sound of the guy eating in the background?
It's like the main ADR. It's not just like, I'll just record something and we'll see and we'll use it. It is a completely different skill set, and you have to make it sound real. There are subtleties and things that, you wouldn't think exist, but, you got to be careful, like not to hit this too high or hit this too low. And if I'm recording a scene with another actor and we're having a conversation, we would do this thing called Walla, and Walla is just like a made up language. And if you just turn it down low enough, it sounds like people are actually talking, but you can't make out what's being said.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I would have like a conversation with somebody, and the other person would not stop talking. They didn't understand, like, we're supposed to be having a conversation. It's give and take. And it's just, if you're just going, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So you've got to, the trick is in your mind, think that you're having a conversation with a person, and then what will come out will sound like an actual conversation. And that gets used pretty much throughout, like, wherever they sell the show around the world. Because it doesn't.
Yeah, right.
Language.
Is that the reason why they do it that way, or is it more if you actually spoke real words that it would be like too harsh of a background noise?
It depends on the show, and it depends on what the producers want. There have been shows where we did have to use English in the background. That can be a lot harder, especially connected to what's going on in the scene. I did like all the looping for a show called Spartacus. First 3 months, all we did was the Coliseum and people screaming out and, this, that, and the other. And it was amazing how many times people would use 21st century terminology. And it's like, that doesn't work. This is a period piece.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's better to just do Walla, but sometimes you are required to use English.
Well, now you brought up the Coliseum scene. That kind of is the same as the Galaxy Warriors scene in Ninja Steel, because you said before that was a particularly daunting looping session. So how did you guys go about tackling, it's massive arena of monsters and stuff. How did you go about doing that?
It's interesting because I had been one of the voice actors for Spartacus, and I had done all of the looping for the Coliseum. It helped pave the way for Ninja Steel, because guess who was the guy that had to direct all the Coliseum stuff in Ninja Steel? Me. It wasn't just Cosmo on stage. I had to direct. I also had to do all the Coliseum. That was an interesting season, because usually the looping gets broken down into a few categories, schedule everything around, okay, we need this kind of looping and we need this kind of looping. This was the first season where we had, like, in order to create the illusion that there's thousands of people there, sometimes entire sessions just dedicated to the Coliseum.
Oh, wow.
And we'd have, maybe 5 or 6 people in the recording booth, and we'd have them cry out, do certain things, and then we would have them move their positions around. We don't want it all sounding the same.
Yeah, right.
You take your pitch up a little bit, you take your pitch down a little bit, and then we would just do passes where we just do 60 seconds of, the people in the booth recording this, and then we'd do another one, then another one, then another one, then we'd have a break, and then we do some more, and we do some more, splice it all together, and it sounded like thousands of people in the Coliseum.
Do they place a microphone, like an area mic for that type of thing? Or is it just everybody has an individual mic?
No, I think for that particular job, it really was just one mic.
Yeah.
I guess it was probably like an omnidirectional mic, so it could pick up, from various, angles.
Yeah, I think that stuff is really, interesting myself. Dealing with sort of the production side of things, you started during what, fans call the Disney era and moved into the Neo Saban era. And there was a lot of changes, of course. For viewers, they definitely noticed. As far as someone who actually worked in the production side of things, what did you see as far as a difference from your standpoint?
My memory is that nothing really changed because it was, for the most part, it was the same crew. So like, the people that had worked behind the scenes, whether the line director or various directors or costume department or makeup, whatever, it almost never changed. There might be a few little changes here and there, but for the most part, it was kind of like the core group. So regardless of whether it was Disney or Neo Saban or Hasbro, it really always kind of felt the same when you walked onto a set or you walked into a recording studio.
I mean, you've done so many things, so many voices, worked so much backstage and everything. And even though you had like a cameo little spot in Dino Charge.
Princess Xandar, huh? Never even heard of Xandar.
When you actually got on set, you got the part of Mr. Whiz and everything, which I know you still auditioned for. Was that nerve-wracking for you? Did you feel pressure to really do well, or?
It's funny that you asked that because given that I was already playing Slither, which is effectively Mr. Whiz, I thought it was going to be really easy. Before I go any further, I should probably make it clear to people, I was not just automatically given that part because I was doing the Slither. I actually had to audition for Mr. Whiz, and I remember being out in the waiting room, hearing other people auditioning for the part and everything. And believe it or not, there was actually a small part of me that wondered if I would even get it. When I got it, I thought, oh, yeah, this is going to be easy. No problem. Very often what happens in this industry, you'll go in at like 5 o'clock in the morning and they don't film you until like 6 p.m. that evening. You're just sitting around waiting because things change, like there's suddenly, we now have to film this scene because we've run out of time over here, and things get moved around and stuff. I don't want to hit the ground running when you're fresh. And I remember going in and they did my makeup and the mustache and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, excellent, good to go and everything. I remember that day there was just delay after delay after delay after delay. And it was just like, oh my gosh. And then I went in for like a rehearsal at one point. They had changed some of my dialogue without even telling me.
Oh gosh, yes.
Okay, I've got to redo this line. When I auditioned for the character, it was kind of implied that he did like a spin. Well, that makes sense because, Slither, when he transforms and everything, he does all these spins and stuff, and he's very flamboyant and dramatic. I rehearsed all these huge dramatic gestures and rehearsing spins, and I was going to do all this kind of wacky cool stuff. When I came in, we walked on set. The director or the first AD, I don't remember who it was, said, oh, by the way, we're running behind schedule, so we have to crank this out in an hour. And it's just like,
yeah, great.
Really? Great. And then for some reason, it was decided that the last half or last third of the scene was going to be done in one continuous shot.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's not easy.
They ended up cutting around the shot and everything, which, and they said, oh, here's your prop. Do you remember the prop? That massive gumball jar.
Oh, yeah.
That thing weighed about 40 pounds. It doesn't look heavy, but it weighed about 40 pounds. And suddenly it was like they gave it to me. I was like, how am I going to do this scene? I mean, I practiced all these spins and everything. In the end, I had to just kind of chuck out everything that I had rehearsed, improvise, on the moment. And I think if you watch the scene, I was absolutely determined to get at least one spin into the scene.
Yeah.
You kind of see me kind of doing a spinny, walky thing into the scene, but that was it. That was all I did. That final shot of me kind of looking around the corner and doing my little evil laugh and then disappearing back around it. Nothing for me to hold on to on the other side of this wall. So, I mean, literally, I was leaning at like a 45-degree angle trying to create this interesting shot. I don't remember if it was the first take or the second take. We'd shot this whole scene and it comes to me and I went around the corner. I had nothing to grip onto, kept going, and I just fell on the ground. I wrecked the shot.
Oh.
And I think I was the only one wearing polyester, so I was sweating like
man.
The Mr. Whiz day of filming was a little more stressful than I expected.
Yeah. You binge watched Mighty Morphin Power Rangers through Dino Thunder at one point while working on the show, which I think you feel like that's not anything that crazy. I mean, I believe that working on a show all day and then going home and being like, I'm going to research more about this show I'm on is probably not something I would say 99% of people who work on the show want to do at the end of the day. What did you really get out of that experience of binge watching this, long running franchise you were working on?
I mean, I don't think it's anything super commendable. I mean, I understand why people might appreciate it, but to me, it was more of like, it's just business 101. If you're going to be selling something or promoting something, you need to know the product. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of reluctantly admitted that, even though I'd been doing voice work since 2005, I didn't really know I was a part of something special or huge until about 2017. I need to understand this more. So I went back and I just binge watched everything over a span of 3 months, and my brain was just cooked. I was so tired. Got a better understanding of what the show was about, obviously. And I think where it really started to pay off was when I would talk with fans, either in interviews or at conventions and stuff, and it was just like, wow, I can actually hold my own. I can actually, communicate with you and and
right.
know what I'm talking about. So I think in that respect, that was probably the biggest payoff I got.
In the 90s and early 2000s, there were some actors who seemed very, well, to put it, I don't know I don't want to say anything mean, but honestly, they seemed kind of embarrassed to be on a kid's show. And like a lot of times they'd go on talk shows for other projects they did after Power Rangers. They really didn't want them to mention Power Rangers. Seen in New Zealand, being such a smaller industry, do people seem to be a lot more positive about being on Power Rangers or having that opportunity, or is it something to where they feel maybe a little pigeonholed into this and maybe they feel a little resentful maybe at times about being on certain shows?
I don't want to speak for everybody, but the general sense that I have is that if you're an actor in New Zealand, you just take the work. You don't, it doesn't matter what it is or what you're doing, you just take the work because there's this much work and there's this many actors in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't always get a say. I guess the thing that really, and it was a long time before I figured this out, given how important Power Rangers is to the rest of the world, I don't think a lot of people who worked on it really understood what they were involved with. To them, it was probably just a job. And to be fair, when I started working on the show, it was just a job. I didn't know anything about it. And then over time, as it became more of a part of my fabric, I realized, wow, I'm part of something big. I need to understand this better so that, I can, show respect to the fans and everything. But if you've just maybe done like a monster du jour, or maybe you've done like one kind of guest character for a few episodes, or maybe you played like a main villain for one season. I think the average actor in New Zealand, because they're so far removed from how it impacts Power Ranger fans in America and other parts of the world, it just doesn't really dawn on us. The same thing happened with other shows that filmed there, like Xena and Hercules. To us, it was just work, even though we didn't realize it was like the most popular show in the world at the time.
Right, yeah, it was huge, massive. I do find that funny because it's like when I'm researching some of these different actors, I feel like there's check marks like, oh, they did Hercules, oh, they did Xena, or like, oh, they did Lord of the Rings, or they got The Hobbit or something like that. And then, or they did a Shortland Street. Is that something they really ever bring up? Or is it just kind of like everybody's doing what they can? They never really like.
I don't think anybody in New Zealand wears certain jobs as a badge of honor. It's like, okay, really? I've got this notch and I've got this notch. It's just, it's just like, we got bills to pay. would just need work. Depending on what circles you run in, there are certain, it's like, if you haven't been on Shortland Street, something is wrong, you know?
Right. That's what I wonder, yeah.
Now, that said, it's amazing how many people actually said to me, like, you know, were you in the Lord of the Rings films? I'm probably like one of 5 people in New Zealand who had nothing to do with the Lord of the Rings, you know? So, you know, I do kind of feel like the odd man out.
You're like, thanks for rubbing it in. Yeah.
You try not to take it the wrong way. It's just like, it's work. And
I think that's probably a healthy mindset for people that, you know, if you get work, you take the work. Some people forget that Power Rangers isn't like a Marvel or Star Wars production, you know, budget or something like that. I feel like Power Rangers has benefited from having more of a culture of like, people just want to get some work. I think that's probably helped the franchise in the last 20 years, that it just keeps rolling, you know.
It's rolling along.
Yeah. So one of the things I really love, because you have your own I can't talk. One of the things I really love about your YouTube channel, because you do have your own YouTube channel where you're doing, how can I be a YouTuber? I can't even say the word YouTube. I can't even say it. Oh, things I really love about your videos is that you really do seem to get into your characters quite a bit. I feel like sometimes there's certain characters people really get invested in, and other ones that they just kind of go, oh, you know, they just don't think about that character for some reason. But you seem to be particularly really fond of Scrozzle, I think. Now, I don't know. I don't know if he's technically your favorite character you've ever done on Power Rangers, but you seem to really like him, and you also seem to really like redemption stories for villains. Do you ever think Scrozzle could have redemption, or do you think that he's just destined to be this way forever?
There are so many directions I could go with answering that question. I've played so many monsters and so many villains. I don't remember when it happened, but I think maybe it was with Scrozzle. Just was like, you know what? I want a villain that has a redemption arc.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he kept getting brought back and everything. And because we weren't given any information about this character, like throughout all of Beast Morphers, no backstory, nothing. We don't know anything about this character. And part of me was kind of hoping that was intentional by the writers so that they could then surprise us with, you know, like some big revelations and reveals and maybe a redemption. The show had its Christmas party, and everyone had showed up and everyone was feasting and making merry. I had this theory about Scrozzle. I went up to one of the writers and I said, you know what? I have a theory about Scrozzle. And I shared this theory with one of the writers. And I said, I think Scrozzle, da-da-da-da-da-da. And his face kind of went. And I thought, oh, I've hit something. And he went, interesting. And he walked off. And I was like, is that, are they planning that? Or did I just give them an idea for something for the future? And of course, for those that have watched Scrozzle's story, we still don't know anything about him.
I know.
And I don't know what his future holds. I mean, he may never get brought back again, depending on where the show goes. But I would love for him to have a redemption arc. That would make me so happy. But ultimately, he's not my character.
I do find it interesting just because there were some people who they'll say like, oh, in Dino Fury or something, like, it makes no sense how Zed could do this or whatever. And then when I watch your videos, Scrozzle's like a genius. He's been like building an army all on his own in this dimension, like during Beast Morphers and stuff. People start bringing that up, like, oh, there's a plot hole here. I'm like, there's no plot hole, because like Scrozzle could do this. It's very possible. Really, honestly, I don't think I would have even thought about it had I not seen your video, because I was just like, oh, I like Scrozzle, cool character. And then we started kind of going into like, well, we don't really know anything about him. And then I instantly was like, you're right, we don't know anything about him. Then it got really interesting, when you start thinking about what could be the backstory of these characters.
I think the closest thing we have to a clue, and that's assuming it was intentional or whether it was just that's the way the writing went, is spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen Beast Morphers. After he escaped, he was found hiding in the RPM universe.
Yeah.
That just begs so many questions, but who knows?
Well, like gosh, I really hope we could see something unfold. That'd be really fun. Franchise as a whole, they keep saying reboot, but we don't really know what that means for sure. And I really appreciate you taking the time. And is there anything you want to promote or let people know?
As you mentioned earlier, I've got a YouTube channel. I don't think it's great. It's just I make it for the fans, and I put up little videos. Sometimes it's me behind the scenes working on the show. Sometimes it's me just talking about my life. You'll find something on there of interest, hopefully. Campbell Cooley, voice actor at large. I've got an Instagram page, Real Campbell Cooley. I've got a Twitter account at Campbell Cooley, and I like interacting with fans. Lately, I haven't been so good. I've been dealing with a lot of stuff, but if you reach out to me, I will try to respond. I'm going to be at Ranger Stop a week from now, so that's Ranger Stop Orlando. That is going to be a crazy weekend. So if you can get to Orlando or you're in Florida, please come out. I'd love to meet you, and it's going to be a crazy weekend. Going back to something you said earlier about videos and the effort I put into voices and stuff. I hate saying this because it sounds very self-congratulatory. I think part of the secret of my success is that I do genuinely try to do something completely different with every character. And I don't even like, certain characters sounding even remotely similar. I don't like any kind of bleed over or anything. One of the complications when I was coming up with the voice of Slither. And I'm currently editing a follow-up video to how the voice came into being. And that was, oh my gosh, that was quite a show, because I wasn't going to audition for Dino Fury. I was kind of like lured into it. I really, really struggled finding Slither's voice. So I want to laugh at my expense. There's already one video up there, Finding Slither's Voice Part 1. That's kind of the intro, and I'm currently editing Part 2, which gives you the rest of the story. And gosh, it's crazy. It's really crazy. It was a miracle I came up with that voice. But that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm probably forgetting something of interest.
But I'll link in the description for everybody so they can start watching stuff. Especially if you're a very serious Power Ranger fan. It's really cool to see all the stuff, because you have such an insight from being on the show almost 20 years. I mean, there's things that, way better than anybody else who, even someone like me who kind of considers himself like a fanatic a little bit. Thank you so much for talking with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a joy.